We tell fathers all the time, you are not here to be your son's friend. That happens. You and I are best of friends. Me and your younger brother are best of friends, but y'all are grown men now.
Self awareness is the foundation of your personal growth, it's the
Mhm.
foundation of your professional growth, and it's the thing that can help you as a parent. Why does emotional intelligence matter so much in raising confident and resilient boys today? And can a father who didn't grow up with EQ actually learn how to use it? That's what we're going to be talking about today. How's it going, Pops?
What's up, man? It's going well. I'm looking forward to this conversation because I think it's pretty crucial as a father. But before we dive in, we would like all of you to please like this video. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, could you please do so as well? We also want to share with you some information about our Father Son Foundation coaching program for dads who have sons under the age of 12. If you're looking to develop stronger relationships and stronger foundations with your son, this program is for you. There's information about it in the description and also the comment section below.
Definitely. All right. So today's conversation is going to be around how fathers can become more emotionally intelligent. And we believe that emotional intelligence is truly a differentiator for modern fathers, right? With so many distractions, technology, the advent of AI, your sons, your children, they're being pulled at so many different angles, right? And emotional intelligence is the thing that can help us become more present. And it's the thing that can help us become better in our relationships. And so, before we dive in, I think it's important for everybody to know that, Pops, you're a certified social and emotional intelligence coach. So, this is something that you've been teaching and coaching other fathers and other individuals on for almost 10 years. Am I right?
Yeah, it's been that long.
Okay, and I know emotional intelligence played a huge role in the way that you raised me when I was growing up. So, as we dive in here, go ahead and just give everybody an overview, a definition of what social and emotional intelligence is.
Yeah, it's merely the ability to be aware of your emotions and the emotions of other people in the moment, and then use that information to manage yourself and to manage your relationships. Now, understand, I didn't say manage other people. It's managing your emotions and understanding the emotions of other people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you for that. And with social and emotional intelligence, there are four main pillars, essentially four areas that cover what our social and emotional intelligence is. And we're going to dive through each of these four areas on this video. But those four areas are self awareness, first, self management, second, then we have awareness of others and relationship management. All right, so let's go ahead and just dive right into the first pillar and get this episode going. So, when we talk about self awareness, first off, self awareness is the understanding of our emotional state, being able to recognize how our emotions are dictating our moods, dictating our mental states as well. And in self awareness, there's three components, three competencies. The first being our emotional self awareness, second being our accurate self assessment, and the third being personal power, right? The ability to cultivate a life that you desire. So, for this episode, Pops, I got some questions that I want to ask you about emotional intelligence so that any of the viewers watching this video can leave this video with some more information and they can leave it with some insights around how
Mhm.
our emotional intelligence impacts the way we move through life. All right. So, as we get started, the first thing I want to ask you, Pops, is why is accurate self assessment so important, but yet so difficult for dads to seem to embrace?
No, that's an excellent question. Let me just build on top of what you shared about self awareness first, and then I'll address your question. Our self awareness is the thing that simply lets us understand our internal state, right? Things like our our personality and our character, our strength as well as all the weaknesses we have. It helps you understand what your purpose is, why you value what you value becomes more clear when you go on a journey of self awareness, and why you believe what you believe becomes better understood. So we can look at it as an internal mechanism into what makes us tick. Now, as far as accurate self assessment is concerned, um, that is so very, very important, because if we're going to be the best people that we could be, then we have to be able to describe ourselves accurately and honestly. And that's really the key word here, is the honesty aspect of it. I think as men, I'm going to generalize a little bit. I think as men, it's harder for us to ask for feedback and ask other people what they think about our skill sets, our strengths, our weaknesses, and that type of stuff. Women have a tendency to be able to do that a lot easier. But as a man who's in his 60s now and been around the block a little bit, it's difficult for us because, we like to think that we have all the answers as men. Sometimes it's hard for us to acknowledge what we know and what we don't know. And accurate self assessment is that thing that allows us to look in the mirror and really honestly describe the person that you see. If you're loving who you see, and you don't feel like you need any improvements, good for you. I would probably tell you that that's a blind spot. And welcome to the human race. All of us have blind spots, but sometimes it's really, really difficult for us as men to just tap into asking other people whose opinion we value. What do you think about me as a dad? What do you think the things that I'm doing are going in the right direction? What is it that I can improve? As you get a little bit older, and I've done this with you. I'll ask you what you think about something that I'm doing, because I'm always trying to get better, and I'm always trying to tap in and become more self aware. And in order to do that, you're not going to have all the answers. Other people can help you find out the true answer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very difficult for anybody to do, I would say, is asking others like genuinely what maybe criticisms do you have for me, or what feedback can you give me that can help me improve, whether it's in our personal lives, whether it's in our professional lives, whatever it may be, right? That's not easy, and it requires us to remove that ego a little bit. And as men, we like to put up that facade. You kind of just alluded to it. We like to put up the facade of like, yeah, we're the resource. We're the person that our spouses can come to. We're the person that our children can come to for answers. And sometimes the right answer is saying, I don't know. But let me find out. Let me help you find out. Let's search this together. Like right. So I think all of those things are really important, and I understand why accurate self assessment can be difficult. But if we look at some of the research, right? Pew Research came out with a study that said almost half of dads doubt that they're doing a good job. And I think that speaks to the lack of accurate self assessment that many dads are putting on themselves, because they're going through life not seeking that validation or seeking the feedback that can help them grow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you bust down that ego, break that wall, and find it within yourself to say, "Hey, let me ask somebody, how I can improve. Let me ask somebody how I'm actually doing in this role of a father." Then that can lead you to actually knowing how good of a job you're truly doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all intertwined. I think that's really important. Now, other parts of our self-awareness include our emotional self-awareness. And as a father, I want to ask you, how did your self awareness shift in terms of raising your children from when we were smaller, under 5 years old, to as we got older into the teenage years? Where did you see that shift take place?
Well, yeah, we as dads, we're our kids' first life coaches. We're our kids' first teachers, really. And there's a danger of being a helicopter parent, or
Yeah.
that umbrella that always wants to be there to provide the guidance and all of the answers sometimes it's better to have more questions than it is answers. And as you got older and as your younger brother got older, it was the realization from me that I needed to let you guys go ahead and explore and make some errors and make those mistakes without correcting you. You were gonna find out. Now, as long as it wasn't anything that was endangering you, right? I was gonna let you guys go down a path where it was gonna cause any sort of hurt, harm, or danger. But to be a self-aware father is to sometimes sit back, in the cut and observe, what your children are doing. If you need to course correct a little bit, you can. The way I started doing that with you and your brother as you got older was to ask you, were you open for some feedback, as opposed to just jumping in and saying, no, you're doing this wrong and you need to be doing it that way, so forth and so on. But I could not have done that had I not been focusing on my own self awareness and my own growth, not only as your father, but as a man, as a person, as a husband, as a coworker, as a boss, all of those types of things. And so, when you were getting older, it was just a matter of just like pulling back a little bit. If I had done a good enough job when you were younger in terms of building that foundation into you, so you could stand on your own 2 feet, which is what we encourage all dads to do at those younger ages. So when y'all get a little bit older, it's a little easier to sit back and watch how things are developing. But it was just a cognizance and awareness, a consciousness, I should say, and an awareness that you were getting older, trying to spread your wings a little bit, and I had to step back because I didn't want to build any resentment into our relationship. So that's how I dealt with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do appreciate your ability to have some foresight and recognize, the conversations that were being had, the directives that were given when I was 10 years old or younger.
Mhm.
Those things had to evolve as I evolved, right? And kids grow out of habits, people grow out of habits, right? And the communication has to change. All of that
Mhm.
is super super important. So as we finish up talking about self-awareness, I think it's important for everybody watching this to know that self-awareness is the foundation of your personal growth, it's the foundation of your professional growth, and it's the thing that can help you as a parent remain present in moments that require your full attention, right? So
Mhm.
many distractions. That's not just for kids. Our cell phones, email, work, responsibilities, all these distractions take place. But when we can become more self aware, it allows us to become a little bit more mindful and it allows us to have better relationships. So let's go ahead and move to the second pillar that we want to talk about, and that is our self management, right? So, if self awareness, you mentioned that it's kind of like the internal mechanism that makes you tick, right? The awareness of that internal mechanism. What our self management is, it's the ability to manage and make sure that that mechanism is actually moving and operating like a well-oiled machine, right? There's no faults, there's no need to troubleshoot, right? When we're operating at our highest level of self-management, we're tapping into our resilience. We are accessing our behavioral self-control. We've got optimism, stress management, the ability to be personal, to be agile, right, in changing situations. There's a bunch of competencies that make up our self management, 10 to be exact. So we don't have time to dive through all of them, but I know self management has played a huge role in my life. The ability to regulate my emotions and regulate myself as I've gotten older, as somebody who has attention deficit disorder, has been incredibly important for me to just become as successful as I am today. And so, the question I have for you, Pops, is what do you say to dads who think that self control and self management means suppressing their emotions?
Oh, that's a good question. You just touched on something a minute ago. You said regulation, and what I would say to dads who feel like things like behavioral self control are suppressing your emotions, they're actually just helping you to regulate your emotions. You don't have to suppress your emotions, but you need to be able to regulate and have an understanding about how your emotions are showing up, particularly when it comes to being a father. You know, all of our kids, boy, girl, they're going to get their cues from us based on the way that we respond versus react to circumstances and situations that arise. And so the ability to just regulate your emotions, to have an emotional reset when you need to, is so very, very important because we're all triggered, by things in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we can let those triggers get the best of us. And so, yeah, regulating those emotions, that self management that you spoke of, is really, really the key. You don't have to, not have emotions, but you need to be able to make sure that your emotions don't control you and that you can control them. And that's very, very important. I know we do, and you can talk about this if you choose to, but when you and I do workshops, we use an exercise. I'll let you talk about it. Actually, an exercise that's perfect for behavioral self-control and emotional regulations. You can share a little bit about that particular exercise because it's really valuable.
Yeah, you're talking about the knee jerk exercise, right?
I mean, that's one right there. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, understanding how those triggers affect us, very important, right? And in fact, I think I would go ahead and drop that worksheet in the chat after this video goes out so that everybody can access it. But like you said, triggers, these disruptive emotions, it's important that we keep these in check. And sometimes we don't even recognize how many triggers we do have. And so this worksheet takes people through step by step, identifying the triggers, understanding how those triggers are impacting us, both physically, right? Sometimes when we tense up, we have a physical reaction to being stressed or being triggered. And then other
Mhm.
times we have a mental reaction. And then we start speaking to ourselves in certain, negative tones and in ways that aren't conducive for helping us manage or get through that trigger, right? And so, yeah, that knee jerk exercise is something that when we have worked with dads in the past, they're like, wow, I didn't realize just how much that this trigger impacted me, right? Something as simple as being cut off in traffic can change the entire mood for the rest of the drive, right? So yeah, that's a really good exercise, and it brings up stress, right? Triggers can be stressful,
Yep.
and stress fatigue doesn't allow us to manage ourselves in the best way possible. It doesn't allow us to sometimes see the glass half full. We start seeing the glass half empty. And that leads me to think about optimism. I think a lot of people feel like optimism is an unrealistic goal when life is super
Mhm.
stressful, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, how would you encourage a father to practice optimism without it being fake, without it being, toxic positivity, but genuinely a coping mechanism?
Yeah. Yeah. That's real. I think optimism is something that's sorely needed. If I could prescribe something, to households throughout the country, optimism would be part of that because I think, our optimism as the adults in the relationships are the things that allows our sons to imagine what is possible. And again, I'll go back to the fact that we have to model behavior. Our sons are sponges. They're looking at how you hopefully respond to things and not just react to things. And, optimism, it's tough, right? Because there's a lot of stresses. You're trying to, make sure that your food is on the table, roof is over your family's head. You're trying to manage the relationships in your life with your children, perhaps with your partner, with the job. So you're juggling all of these things, and it could be a very stressful situation. But there are very few things in life that we have total control over.
Mm,
And one of those things that we do have control over is our attitude and our outlook and I believe optimism plays a big role in that. Optimism, positivity, they play a gigantic role in that. Now, sometimes we find ourselves going down rabbit holes with technology, social media. You got all these platforms, and so it requires us to take some digital detox. Sometimes that optimism that you maybe are feeling can go south real quick just by reading, some sort of a post or seeing something that triggers you. Right? They put you
yeah.
in in a bad space. And so, digital detoxes are important. Sometimes you just got to, put the phone down for a day, maybe a weekend, perhaps after a certain time in the evening. The phone is done, and you're not going to pick it up until a particular time in the morning because. I mean, let's keep it a buck, right? People will pick up the phone. When I was in the corporate world for 25 years, oftentimes I would wake up in the morning. The first thing I do is try to grab my phone and start looking at emails, and I completely surrender any power that I had over my day because I started my day off doing that. So digital detox are good. Sometimes you need people detox. I mean, let's be real. There are times where there are folks that are around us that perhaps are not adding to our lives, but they're subtracting to our lives. And we have to be able to acknowledge that self awareness, right? We have to be able to acknowledge this isn't good for me. This doesn't put me in the space I need to be. And you got to let go of that as well. But optimism plays a very, very important role in how your children see life, how they are what their perspective is, how they see themselves, and how they comport themselves, like when they step
Right.
out of your home and go into the world. So optimism is a huge part of self management. Not always easy, something that needs to be worked on. But optimism, gratitude, those are things that are very powerful superpowers. And I would encourage everybody to start leaning into that.
Yeah, we didn't even
Yeah, we.
dive too deep into gratitude, but what you just said about that and how gratitude, gratitude is a practice. Gratitude
Yep.
is intentional. And when we express gratitude to those around us, to those that have helped us out, that in turn is building up our optimism. It's building up those positive experiences, especially in our relationships. And I'm very prideful. I'm prideful of the optimism that I exude, we exude as a business, and our family exudes, and the positivity that we share with our community and with the wider world. I think is very important. That optimism has allowed me to navigate some of my biggest struggles in life. The optimism has allowed me to be a little bit more opportunistic in business, right? Being able to seek out, oh, okay, this might be a good avenue for us to take, and having that mentality of growth as opposed to the mentality of like, okay, this is fixed. Like, why do we want to branch out into something that we've never done before? We don't know if
Mhm.
we're going to be good at it, right? Like
Mhm.
the flip, being able to flip that switch to, yeah, we don't know if we're going to be good at it, but that is equally an opportunity to go and strive and try to expand our repertoire, right? So that we can get better.
Yep.
All of those things I think is very important. Like you said, optimism can really help, and can really help young people cope. It can really help young people deal with stress, and it gives people perspective a lot of times when life gets really tough.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. Life is going to get tough, but how are you able to overcome? And I think
Yeah, And,
optimism.
and, and and let me just add this. I think it's very important to embed that in your sons when they are young, because as you said, life is going to get tough. And you mentioned resilience a little bit earlier, how you deal with having attention deficit disorder. You're going to have roadblocks, you're going to have setbacks, going to be obstacles. But again, it's the power of the mind. Like,
Hmm.
are you going to be able to get past this? Do you feel like you can get past this, or have you already defeated yourself in your mind by saying, this isn't going to work out for me? And so, we got to be realistic, that everything's not going to be smooth sailing, but I believe in optimistic realism because it lets you know that, like, hey, even if, things didn't go the way I wanted them to go on Monday, Tuesday comes, I have another opportunity, and it could get better. You can only do that if you have a positive, optimistic outlook.
Yep. Yep. Mindset. That's really what social and emotional intelligence is about. It's about mindset. It's about your mentality. What is your approach to these situations? What is your approach to the relationship that you have with yourself? The
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness and the self-management. And then furthermore, what is your approach to the relationship that you have with other people, right? And so that's actually going to segue us to talking about the third pillar. And we're pivoting from self awareness, self management. Now we're talking about other awareness, right? The ability to have some situational awareness, recognizing in moments what is needed, understanding or tapping into certain cues, whether it be verbal cues, whether it be nonverbal cues, understanding how somebody is saying something, what's the tone of voice in which they're using when they're describing how they're feeling, right? Asking somebody how they're doing and not just expecting the generic, oh, I'm good. But if they start explaining to you how they're actually doing, taking into account the things that they're saying and sometimes the things that they're not saying, right? And so when we talk about other awareness, there's empathy, being service oriented, and situational awareness. Those are the three components that make up our other awareness. Now, some dads worry empathy makes boys soft, right? A lot of dads will refer to the participation trophy generation. Kids just getting ribbons and medals and trophies just for showing up, right? I use that example because I feel like that kind of can symbolize a little bit of empathy of like, hey, everybody's here, everybody can, can
Everybody's a
essentially
winner.
experience. Say that again.
Everybody's a winner.
Everybody's a winner, right? So what do you say in response to people, men, fathers, saying that empathy makes boys soft?
Well, empathy is actually a beautiful leadership skill, and if you're raising your sons to have leadership qualities, one of the best qualities that they can have is empathy, the ability to put themselves in somebody else's shoes. I actually think it's a strength and not a weakness, but a lot of men don't understand how to use it and turn it into a strength. I think soft skills are a strength. I think it's a strength in managing relationships. I think it's a strength in being able to connect with other people. I think it's a strength to be able to have success in the world as you go through the world. That's my response. Empathy is a very, very powerful, helpful tool to raise very well-rounded, grounded young men who can grow up to be very well-rounded, grounded leaders. I spent, as I mentioned a little bit ago earlier in the video, I spent 25 years in corporate America. Close to 20 of them were in leadership positions. And I found empathetic leadership was really something that I leaned into because I was able to get a lot more out of the people that were reporting to me versus just browbeating them all of the time. You don't want somebody that's your boss to just browbeat you. How's that going to motivate you? How's that going to inspire you? And so, fortunately for me, I had a father that did not believe that empathy was a weak trait. He built that into me to make me understand that's how you build community. That's how you build connection. That's how you build some strength. And that's how you through life, being able to be respectful to other people and have the civility required to be a contributor into this society. That's what I wanted you and your brother to be. And that's one of the reasons that I put emphasis on empathy when you were growing up, right? We go into a myriad of examples of that. We do that in our Father Son Foundations program. We won't do it on this video. But the point is that there are techniques and there are ways that when your sons are younger, that you build these things into them. And as they get older, that light bulb goes off. And so when they're in school, I'll just quickly, you had an incident when you were in high school and you saw some boys bullying some other kids and consistently saw that, and you were just kind of like, okay, that's enough, and you stepped in on that other kid's behalf because you had the empathy to understand what that young person was going through. So yeah, it doesn't make you soft, in a lot of ways it makes you hard. And it's a mixture of some hard skills and some soft skills, like you often say. Soft skills go hard, and I think they can.
Yeah, they definitely can. You know, you threw me off with that one, but I love that you modeled that behavior for me. You talked about how Grampy modeled that behavior for you,
Yeah.
and you did a great job of modeling that. I mean, part of the ways that I saw you, express empathy for others is just the way in which it you made people feel like you have a genuine interest in their well-being,
Mhm.
in their livelihood, in just who they are, their story,
Yep.
right? And I always admired that. I learned from that. I learned that that's how you can build deeper connections, more genuine connections. And also, it's a way that you can get people to open up. You talked
Yep.
about it as a leader, right? Like in the professional field, if you are leading people, you need people to be engaged. You need people to be participating, right? Sometimes you need people to open up, so you have to be aware how you can do that, how you can cultivate a culture that people feel like, okay, I'm not just talking at a wall, or if I speak up here, my words and my voice will be taken into consideration, not
Hmm.
just brushed aside, and I won't feel disregarded. That's incredible, and I've seen
Yeah.
that my entire life, right? And as I've become an adult, even as I was a teenager, I started to implement some of those tactics, implement that skill of being empathetic, and that's allowed me to create some of the best relationships,
Hmm.
that I'll ever have. So that part's really important, and it also, when we talk about taking a genuine interest in the lives of other people, taking a genuine interest in everyone's story, that means we have to be open to different styles of communication, right? That means we have to be open to maybe agreeing to disagree, but not falling out over it. Can you share a story or a moment where your understanding of me and my world and maybe my emotions shifted how we communicated, right? And I guess I'm pivoting to talking about some situational awareness here. Where did that show up for you when it came to raising us?
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna use a. We're gonna go to sports now, right? Because sports was a big part of our lives, of our household. I coached AAU travel basketball for over 10 years. 5 of them were coaching your teams, and how, this is a great example. When you were younger, I'll say fifth grade, sixth grade. Um, One of the things that internally drove me nuts was you did not like to shoot the basketball. You you would D up all your heart. You'd be in people's grills. As and even if they were bigger than you're like you were tenacious on the defensive end. You ran point guard. You understood the game very very well for a young person, so you were able to facilitate things, and you were able to to dish the ball very very effectively. And but you could be open for a jump shot, dude, and you're looking to do the Ben Simmons thing, man. You're looking to pass the ball. You're looking to pass the ball no matter what,
Hey.
and it would drive me absolutely nuts to the point where your mother would just say, after games to me, she's like, "Look, you just got to let him play the game the way he wants to play the game." So that helped me have an understanding of your world. I understand pretty quickly that you wanted to win, you loved winning, and you felt like the way that you could contribute to the team with winning was your strength, right? And shooting the basketball, I thought you were a decent shooter, but you didn't have the confidence to do that. And so what I had to understand is, when you were on the floor, I wasn't looking for you to score points. I was looking for you to do the other things that you did very, very well. There were times where I get upset at you that you wouldn't shoot the ball, and I could see that you would recoil a little bit because you didn't have the confidence to do it. So I needed to understand and shift the way in which I communicated with you during those years. I will say this, man. I'm not trying to dish you on this video, man. But your brother summed it up perfectly. when you were about 12 or 13 years old. He said that you were the condiment on the sandwich. You weren't the main part of the sandwich. You were the condiment of the sandwich. And I was like, that's a pretty good visual right there. So you added to the main meal. You just didn't want to be the main meal. But I had to understand that, and I had to adjust the way in which I communicated that to you. And so yeah, that's wild. That illustration is a really good illustration because it played such a role in me raising you and our interaction with sports for all of those years when you were growing up.
Yeah, Justin really flamed me with that roast, talking about I'm the condiment on the sandwich. Look, I'll tell you this much. If your sandwich ain't got mustard, mayo, a little aioli on it, it's dry. It's dry. Who's gonna appreciate that? So maybe the condiments are the most important part. That's all I'll say. Yeah, I do remember having those difficult conversations, growing up around basketball, seeing just how much you wanted me to take that next step, in terms of becoming a better player, being more assertive on the basketball court, showing off my skills, having that confidence. I think that was the biggest thing for you is you just wanted to see that I was confident when I played, right? And I think it took a long time for you to recognize and realize just how it was I was developing as a basketball player and not necessarily using that example and taking it, saying like that's who I am across the board, but in that space, in that arena, yeah, I wanted to distribute more. I was point guard. I liked getting assists. I wanted to play defense. I wanted to do all the plays, make all the plays that don't show up in the stat sheet necessarily. That's how I felt like I could contribute best to the team. So that was me. That was me. I think the important thing for dads to understand is, you're not going to get these years back, but your son is going to live with what he remembers.
Yeah.
So it is about becoming more aware and having some empathy in your communication. It is about modeling the behavior, giving him the skills that'll set him up to be more successful in life. And if you don't have those skills, if you don't know what they are, it's up to you to find out what you need to develop in order to pass that stuff down to your son. So that's very, very important. Let's go ahead and move on to the last pillar of our conversation, and this is relationship management. And relationship management, I think this is the most this is the most influential component of our social and emotional intelligence. I think self awareness is the most important, meaning, in order for you to have good social and emotional intelligence, dive into your self awareness. But in order for you to show off and be the most impactful with yourself, social and emotional intelligence, it's the ability to manage relationships, right? The ability to build trust, the ability to maybe coach or mentor others, the ability to build rapport with people, right? There's 10 different competencies of our relationship management. But Pops, I'm just going to throw it over to you and talk about communication because that's part of our relationship management. We just kind of talked about it in terms of that AAU story, but what's a simple communication shift that a dad can make right now after watching this video that will instantly change how their son responds to them?
Mhm. No, that's good. That's good. You brought up the word trust just a second ago, which I believe is foundational in every relationship that we have, and certainly the father and son relationship. As fathers, we have to make sure that we are consistently building that trust, so our sons know that they can come and talk to us about, anything and everything. And as a father, I love that, right? Because, the more that I talk to you and encourage you to talk back, encourage you to have some open conversations with me. As long as you were talking, I was never wondering what was going on with. And I think that as fathers, we have to understand that, right? You don't have to guess if they're telling you. The communication shift that someone could do this week, and I think is very important and is connected to trust, is when you are when you are given a direction, or if you're answering some questions, don't be afraid to share your rationale behind what it is that you're saying. And don't be afraid to share your why, because it's a real trust. It's a trust maker. It's a trust builder. Oftentimes as fathers, the word no comes along frequently, right? You want to do some things that you want to go hang out at a particular place. Something that as a dad you're saying, no, I don't think that's the right time right now, or no, that's not going to happen. There's nothing wrong with saying no. We tell fathers all the time, you are not here to be your son's friend. That happens. You and I are best of friends. Me and your younger brother are best of friends, but y'all are grown men now. When you were growing up, we weren't friends. And so at the same time, I felt that it was very productive to be able to share with you, if I told you no, something wasn't happening, share with you why that certain thing wasn't happening, because I wanted you to understand that. And even though I grew up in an era and in a time, and many of the fathers that are watching this video may have grown up at the same time or experienced it even these days. It was, because I said so. You were asked to do something or told to do something, and the response after you asked, well, why do I have to do that? Is because I said so. Or be seen and not heard. And okay, that's all well and fine and dandy, but we're talking about creating legacy relationships with your son, and that doesn't lead to legacy relationship. That leads to distrust, and that leads to somebody just consistently being a little bit angry because you haven't taken the time or had the emotional maturity to sit down and explain to your son why A, B, or C is happening. And so that is a shift that if you can wrap your brain around the fact that, um, you know, by sharing something with your son, it's not like you're just like, you guys are equals. The fact of the matter is, what you're doing is you're explaining to him, and you're showing the emotional maturity to be able to let him know, what your innermost thoughts are and how you came to those. And those are trust builders. And so that would be my recommendation. Practice sharing your rationale. And if you have a good rationale for it, it's not hard to do.
Yeah, yeah. And when I was growing up, you struggled with the fact that I didn't always express myself, right? I wasn't opening up. But the moment the moments in which you started to open up, that's when I began to open up. When you started to share your rationale, I gained a lot of respect for you because it felt like you were incorporating me into the decision making. Not necessarily prior to, but at least you were giving me the respect to tell me the reasons why I couldn't go hang out with these people, or the reasons why, I wasn't able to have, X, Y, or Z. And that the awareness gave me a little bit of perspective and some wherewithal, right? It helped me build up my own critical thinking skills. And I love what you said about never wondering what I was saying because you were talking to me, right? And any father, any parent needs to understand that you'll never wonder what your child is thinking if you are talking to them and if they
And
are
if they're
talking to
talking
you.
to you, that's
Yeah.
it. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a two-way street, right? And so, yeah, communication is really, really important. Relationship management is really, really important. In fact, I think, we're going to have to do a separate video altogether just about all the competencies of relationship management because it's been really, really impactful for how it is that you've been successful, not only in your personal life with your relationships, but in your professional success. And it's also influenced the way that I've been able to be successful in the same
Mhm.
areas, right? And so,
Mhm.
and as we begin to close down this episode, I just want to recap what the four pillars of social and emotional intelligence are. Self awareness is the first pillar. Self-management is the second pillar, having an awareness of others, and then being able to manage our relationships. And my dad mentioned earlier in the episode about our Father Son Foundations group coaching program. In that program, we lay out and we teach dads how they can become a more emotionally intelligent father, how they can begin to cultivate stronger relationships with their children. And that starts with having a stronger relationship with yourself. So if you want to learn more about Father Son Foundations, check out the comment section below. We'll go ahead and leave a link so that you can access that information and join the next cohort. But this has been a great episode, Pops. I've enjoyed talking about this. I look forward to having more conversations around emotional intelligence because dads need to understand this.
If you want to have emotionally intelligent children, you need to be an emotionally intelligent father. And yeah, this was good, man. I enjoyed this conversation.
Definitely. All right, y'all. Peace.